Okay, hello, Tyler Bryden here. Hope everything's going well. Ton going on. I'm a little late recording this video on the pattern that I've been on. We've had a bit of a family emergency, and I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it definitely is one of those moments in time where it changes your perspective on what's important. And although I was on a good run recording some videos, there's things that take priority. So maybe I'll talk about that on another day. It's been a tough few days here for the family, but for now I'm going to soldier on. I'm going to get back into the routine. I'm going to keep recording these videos. In the last 28 days, almost 100,000 views, $36 made in YouTube revenue. I'm making enough to pay off my Google G Suite email that I originally linked with this YouTube that I can't transfer or remove, and so I'm stuck, and they keep increasing prices. So I am just over break even on G Suite now if I keep this pace up, which is pretty good pace. But then with the script and an Opus clip, probably back in the red. So still, I'm burning money on this YouTube channel, but I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm enjoying the creating. It's a forcing function for me, and I really appreciate all the comments and engagement. It's been fascinating. I've learned a lot from the people who are watching and commenting, so thank you very much for doing that. With that being said, let's get into today's video. A lot on the docket. I'm recording this Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. Just for reference, it's Liberation Day in the United States. Now, Trumpy's going to come out at 4 p.m. here with the real plan. So what I'm recording now has that lack of information. I just wanted to make that disclaimer. There's going to be information coming out of this fast and furious, probably the announcement and then maybe retaliatory tariffs from other countries. Apparently Canada and Mexico, some of these countries are already folding. So much is happening so quickly. I'm not going to be able to get to all that in the video. After a little touch on that American moment in time here, we're back into some Canadian politics, which is still going hot as we head closer and closer to the election, under 30 days here now. That includes carbon tax removal, which is not a removal, it's a pause. That's in effect. We've got some incident with a representative wanting to take a competitor to the Chinese embassy for a bounty. That was wild. We've got some Trump connections with Carney here that are pretty interesting. The classic Carney sucks section and continues to be filled with lots of great moments there. Alberta possibly leaving Canada, depending on how this election goes. Then we've got some updates on Pierre, including some of his agenda, a battle with PBD that continues. More Tesla vandalism missing again. Pierre with a biological clock comment that went a little haywire in the response. And then we've got some interesting stuff happening with OpenAI, both some funding and a huge release of image model, which if you've been on the internet, you've probably seen a Ghibli studio rendering somewhere coming out of OpenAI, as well as some announcement that open source is coming from the company after disavowing that for quite some time. And as I say that, it is dumping snow here. Canadians are okay with winter, but once it starts to creep past end of March into this April time here, it is devastating. I'm just looking out into a flurry here right now. It's one of the reasons why the room's a little bit darker here today. Now, here we are, big image of Donald Trump. You got the American Eagle and Donald waking up. It's Liberation Day. And this has been trending for quite some time here with really a lot of uncertainty going into this event. Listening to Bloomberg today, they've been saying the same things they've been saying for months. No one really knows. Some people saying that their dynamic calculation of understanding every country's tariffs and having some scaled math that works for each one of those is not taking place, and that's going to be either flat 10 or 20% across, or maybe some countries that they think are treating them well, they get 10, others get 20. And what this is creating is chaos in the world, and even interestingly, people like Larry Summers on an interview today really railing against this rollout of this plan, the instability and the uncertainty in the market that's been created. And anecdotally, I've started to see this have impact in Canada, even with a family member having some of their work impacted by this uncertainty. And even if it's temporary, it's making a true impact on their lives. And that's a good person who's worked really hard for a long time in the automotive sector. And I think like this event, this family emergency that we had, where a lot of times things are just numbers, it feels like. When you see a real person impacted, it makes a huge difference on your experience and understanding of the situation and what's going on. So Donald, I don't know if he's playing 4D chess. I don't know what the master plan is, if that's going to come to fruition. But here we are, Liberation Day, and let's see what takes place. Now we got a little teaser video here from the White House government, and he's really put the branding up on this. And that's why I feel like all the hype could really lead to this feeling like a bit of a flop. And that could go two ways, where it's like anticlimactic, or it's over climactic or over aggressive and has really detrimental impacts. And watch that Netflix documentary on Trump, and throughout his whole life he's continued to make these big claims about these big days and events, since all the branding and this stuff. But when you do that, you have to deliver on that moment. So again, we'll see if that's going to take place. But let's watch a second of this video just to see what's going on here.
Pushing ahead with his America First agenda.
Breaking news, Apple announced it's going to work with Foxconn to build a server factory in Texas by 2026.
The company says it is now planning to invest $500 billion in the U.S. economy.
The CEO of SoftBank pledging to invest $100 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years.
This is President Trump delivering on the promise he made to the American people on the campaign trail.
The idea is come to America, build greatness in America, build for the American customers.
Project Stargate. It's a joint venture between SoftBank, Oracle, and OpenAI.
So maybe this gets to the tariffs. It's a 3-minute long video, but what they're trying to show is that already even the threat or the instability of tariffs is driving investment into the United States. And these are public leaders in the world who are making these statements, who are making these investments. And I think it is hard to argue with the success of at least some of those pieces, despite, again, the tumultuous rollout that it has been. And a lot of us, again, are coming from this perspective, I as a Canadian, where it's been just an annoying, frustrating time for us. But if Trump is operating with this truly America First mindset and making sure that there are things done for their country, then when I take on that view, I can understand at least some of this mechanism for trying to onshore manufacturing. And they've also talked about the security needs for that and the impact on the middle class, who used to have these jobs before manufacturing was rolled out and outsourced to other countries. You don't need to watch the whole video. It's a lot of hype and showing the impact on tariffs and the investment coming in to the United States. So he has the whole schedule here today. The big one is at 4 p.m., the Rose Garden address. Again, seems like even the people within the organization don't exactly know what's going to happen here. Originally, it was supposed to be earlier, but it looks like they're doing it after market close. So maybe it can react with a little bit less volatility than if they did it mid-session or end of session here on a trading day. And we're going to see already people possibly folding under this. This is our big bad Premier Ford saying he's willing to drop all of Canada's tariffs and he'll take them off tomorrow.
Let's sit down and discuss this, because it's just going to hurt American jobs. And I can't stress it enough. And again, he believes he's supporting Americans. He said he was going to create jobs, create wealth, reduce inflation. It's worked the total opposite. Inflation.
But do you think it's fair that you have tariffs on a whole number of products?
That's right. And we'd be willing to take those off tomorrow if he took all the tariffs off. We are not the problem, Andrew. The problem is China's the problem. And he's taking a blind eye to China as they continue to build their critical mineral mass. We have all the critical minerals that our great neighbors need. We have the energy that our great neighbors need.
I just want to go back for a
From a quick look, Ford's not sounding as confident as he was, so I'm not sure if people have gotten to him or he's starting to see the impacts on this already in the province. And I say this as someone who is in Ontario.
I just want to go back for a moment. If, in fact, you're prepared to take your tariffs off, why wouldn't you have that negotiation and that conversation now before any tariffs get put in place?
We've had this conversation for over the last month. We don't want tariffs. We have another $65 billion worth of tariffs to launch today. That's the last thing we want to do, because it's just, again, it's going to hurt both countries. It's going to hurt American workers. That's the last thing I want.
Unfortunately, it's true, again, with Canada's economy and its dependence on the U.S. I think I saw something like 3/4 of exports versus U.S. for Canada, it's only like 13%. And so we've really put ourselves in a bad spot. And J.D. Vance, I think, in Greenland just abruptly said, hey, Canada's not going to win a trade war against the U.S. Everyone knows this. Maybe that's starting to appear here in Ford's rhetoric and energy here.
Meant take the other ones off, not the ones you're launching today, the ones that you already got.
You're saying you take all your tariffs off. I'm saying
we will take them off. That's right.
Then why is that not already? I guess my question is, why has all of that not already happened? And does President Trump know that you'd be prepared to do that?
He knows, and Secretary Lutnick knows that we're willing to take these tariffs off like in the next minute if he said he's taking their tariffs off. So
it seems like Trump has other things on his agenda or mind, and maybe just wants to punish Canada a little bit for the way that it's been behaving and acting. And maybe with even Trudeau gone, he still holds some resentment there. And interestingly enough, some of the rhetoric around the fentanyl has died down, and now it's just become this back and forth between tariffs. And what's been interesting is Trump has talked maybe relatively favorably about the Liberals, and even after a call with Carney. And there's some information coming out about the relationship between Carney, Musk, and then also Carney and Kushner. So Brookfield purchased a 99-year lease on a $1 billion property owned by Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. There's the connection between Stripe, Musk, and transactions in X, but that's a reach. Stripe powers everything. And this guy who's pretty loud on X, talking about how there's a belief in Trump having some leverage over Carney, and is one of the reasons why Trump has endorsed him. Now, I don't know if this is pure speculation. Again, he won't disclose these financial holdings. Canadians likely won't see this before the election, but still these murmurs and information is starting to come out. And then there's also interesting U.S. investigating him for his climate cartel, as Mario calls it here. So that's my little transition from U.S. into Canada. I did my absolute best there. Let's jump into Canada and the U.S. It's the first time I've looked at this for a bit. I just can't believe look at this trajectory that's taken place. Pierre caught up and surpassed Carney, and it's now 70% to 31%. So I don't know what they know that I don't know, because as we've seen with these rallies, there's a lot more natural excitement for Pierre, and he's filling out these massive venues where it seems like 10 people, 20 people are showing up for Carney's events. On the other hand, I am definitely seeing people that I know in my life, for whatever reason, starting to edge back towards the Liberals. Maybe it's just some sense of comfort. The labeling of Pierre as Maple MAGA and Donald's chaotic activities making Canadians nervous and worrying that Pierre will do something like that, even though signs indicate that he won't. I'm thinking it's some Stockholm syndrome where you start to like to be the captor. I don't know. It's messed up. And so one of the big moments this week has been in April here, the carbon tax was not removed, but paused here by the Liberal government. And here's the Liberal messaging about this, that gas prices just dropped 20 cents per litre thanks to Mark Carney scrapping the carbon tax. And then the Liberal Party says the government puts more money in your pocket for what matters most, your family. And I think this is the other side, is that Liberals are celebrating something that they've put on Canadians, and for years said that this was absolutely necessary, or the whole country, the whole world was going to burn. We got Ford here, finally done with the federal carbon tax, the worst tax ever. Let's get that passed on to Canadians at the pumps. Obviously, we'd like that money back, but that's just the way it goes here. And then we've got this discrepancy about this, that the consumer carbon tax is not gone. It's just been reduced to zero, and it's still a law, and the price can be put back up at any time, really with the goal to abolish it. And if you look at Carney's agenda, he wants to continue to scale the carbon tax up every year. And we can't forget how Liberals used to feel about the carbon tax.
I came to Ottawa this morning from my home province of Nova Scotia, where our communities are literally on fire. Thousands upon thousands of families have been displaced from their homes. Hundreds are watching as their homes may be turned into ashes. 8 months ago, Hurricane Fiona damaged our communities beyond measure, displacing not just homes, but sweeping people out to sea in some instances. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are peddling policies that they know will increase the level of pollution that is causing these severe weather events. We have one planet, Mr. Speaker. It is my home. It is yours. I will not stand idly by and watch it burn.
There you go. They're celebrating this now, by the way. Carney here with his wonderful fake executive order on the carbon tax.
Makes a big difference in your pockets. So we're happy to see that Mark Carney's team is moving forward with cutting the carbon tax for consumers. And we will, of course, continue to roll out what else we'll be doing for Canadians during this election.
same people, Carney and Trudeau, and same parliament and cabinet made up. So no real change here has been made, but the messaging is incredible, and our memories as Canadians is pretty incredible if we truly believe this now. Now, this was the famous one here.
Fun time vacation where you're locked in a car for 10 consecutive days, nonstop with no bathroom breaks, and the Conservatives have a plan for you to have that summertime fun. And the cost? Give up the future of the planet, right? Don't worry, kids, about climate change. Don't worry about taking action on the planet. Enjoy your 10 hours in the car and let the planet burn.
By the way, after this, he flew to the Olympics. So a bunch of hypocrites here, and just really crazy conflicts that are going on now.
Don't want to do anything. You don't want to put measures to fight climate change. And the planet and Canada can go to hell in a handbasket. He doesn't care. But if you're serious about fighting climate change, this is not the only way, but the best way of doing it.
So hell in a handbasket, that's where we're going if we remove the carbon tax. And yet here we are. It reminds me in a way of the COVID messaging that we're all bad people if we don't get vaccinated and all this stuff. And then you find out all the agenda and everything later about what was really going on. So confusing dark time. If we're really going to fall for this, and it seems like, at least based on Polymarket and some of the polls, that's exactly what's happening right now. So I think that brings me to my classic Carney sucks section. That's the Carney sucks sound effect. And let's just jump through a few things that have come out over the last week. So one, government is getting back into housing development. So full communist Soviet style mass government housing.
The homes will also street to build affordable homes at scale, including on public lands. We'll make good on the promise to unlock federal lands for home building on a post-war scale. Build Canada Homes will also provide $10 billion of low-cost financing to builders to construct deeply affordable homes for those most in need, as well as housing for students.
No one believes that really they're going to be able to build these homes affordably. Someone did the math. It's like $70,000 a home that they're building. It's just unbelievable, the proposition here. Next, we have Mark Carney saying that he's not going to build new pipelines if elected. And a lot of interesting conflicts here between Brookfield, the energy in other countries that they have there, and really trying to stop Canada from participating in this global market as a huge resource provider.
69, with your plans to build infrastructure in Canada, do you plan to repeal Bill C-69?
We do not plan to repeal Bill 69, to answer your question directly.
Answers the question directly, and you can see makes it impossible to build the pipelines, energy infrastructure Canada needs, especially in a time where the U.S. is threatening us with these tariffs, and we need to diversify our economy and the customers that we have. Carney sucks. Another one, Brookfield, where Carney holds ties, set to acquire Colonial Pipeline, the largest fuel pipeline in the U.S., but he won't approve pipelines in Canada. He's not here to compete with the U.S. He's here to protect American interests. And of course, he often lives in New York. That's where his family is. Why do you think Donald Trump endorsed Carney? Carney sucks. We've got Trudeau's half-brother talking about how Carney is an installed WEF globalist, hell-bent on staying in power at the expense. We've got Carney quotes that the Western society is morally rotten and requires rigid controls on personal freedom. And this is where the weird connection between Carney and China starts to
And it'll be important that China is center stage to shape this new global sustainable financial system.
So this is obviously some really interesting moments where Carney and Brookfield seem to have a relationship with China, including this $250 million loan coming from China. And really it seems maybe some leverage over, and possibly China having some leverage over Carney and Brookfield. We've got more stories about him hiding taxes through Brookfield and avoiding taxes in Canada. And then, of course, to bring it back to Carney and China, we had this Liberal member of Parliament, Paul Chiang, sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right, said if someone were to kidnap a Conservative candidate and deliver it to the Chinese consulate, there's $1 million bounty. This was the big scandal. And really, there's already a lot of messaging around Canada being owned by the CCP, which is not a good thing. Carney then protects Chiang and says he doesn't need to step down and should continue his candidacy.
One of the candidates in Markham talked about turning over a Conservative candidate to the Chinese consulate to receive a bounty placed on him by the Chinese Communist Party. Can you explain why you've not dropped him as a Liberal candidate?
Thank you for the question. Look, the comments were deeply offensive. This is a terrible lapse of judgment by Mr. Chang. He has apologized for those comments. He has apologized directly now to the person that he mentioned, apologized directly to him yesterday. I've spoken to Mr. Chang as well over the course of the weekend to understand his position. He is a veteran policeman. Mr. Chang is a veteran policeman with more than a quarter century of service to his community, 28 years of defending rights in this community, and he will continue with his candidacy going forward, having made those apologies very clearly to the individual, to the community, and moving forward to serve.
So this story wouldn't stop. Then, of course, Pierre goes at him.
It is a teachable moment. It teaches us that Mark Carney will never stand up for Canada. He is keeping on a Liberal candidate who said that people should turn over the Conservative candidate to a bounty by the Chinese government, which wants to kill him. The Chinese government wants to literally kill Zhou Tai because he's a political dissident. And this candidate said that should happen. Mark Carney keeps that candidate on his roster to be in Parliament. It shows that Carney is more interested in pleasing Beijing because they lent him $250 million for his company. He is compromised. I have never in my life seen a prime minister unwilling to protect a Canadian citizen against a foreign government that wants to take his life through a bounty. If Mark Carney won't stand up for a Canadian against this foreign hostile regime now, how could we ever expect him to stand up for Canada after the election?
There you go. Pierre Crispy, as always, nailed that home. And then what do we have? Chang has resigned. So statement after the pressure built up just the day after Carney defended him. Just another intense, horrible moment here for Canada as we near this election. And I keep talking about trying to figure out these biases here of why I'm so opposed to Carney, and that yet the red flags just keep coming, and I continue to have that guttural reaction that this is a very dangerous time for Canada, and Carney cannot be the one who goes into power. And I am not the only one. Canadians permanently leaving Canada hits the highest level since 1967. They're going to places like Spain, Portugal, Vietnam, Cambodia, getting out of this country now. I think that's only going to accelerate if Carney goes into power. And now we're seeing this in actual provinces. So Alberta, the rallying cry to secede from Canada continues to increase, especially, I think, if Carney goes into power. And Daniel Smith will listen to Albertans if this takes place.
And see if there are any other referendum issues that they want us to put on the table.
An idea that might sound familiar.
Albertans have been working for Ottawa for too long. It's time for Ottawa to start working for us.
In 2019, then Premier Jason Kenney launched a 9-person fair deal panel to get Alberta a better deal within Canada. This political scientist says the two panels might sound similar. They are not.
This seems to be a specific attempt to gin up anti-Ottawa, anti-Liberal attitudes in the aftermath of an election that isn't even over yet.
Smith's panel proposal comes within weeks of her threat of an unprecedented national unity crisis if the next PM doesn't meet her 9 demands within 6 months.
Stoking national unity crises that don't currently exist is certainly something new for the Premier of Alberta and should be worrisome not only for the next Prime Minister but for all Canadians.
I think she's articulating the so far unarticulated sentiments of most Easterners. Just don't get it.
Albertan sentiments will be articulated in the upcoming election. Recent polling puts our province at odds with most of the country, showing Conservatives with 53% support on the prairies versus 36% across the rest of Canada, with Mark Carney leading across Canada as preferred PM with 47%. That support drops down to 29% in our region.
We're fully aware that we have been treated very badly by Laurentian Canada since before we were even provinces. It's not alienation, it's just there's only so much you can take.
Canadians head to the polls April 28th.
And so we always thought it was going to be Quebec to secede first, but here we are now with Alberta under the threat of the Carney Liberal government. And then here's a picture of Canadians voting Liberal again after 4 more years. This is what I feel right now when I watch this. And this is as someone who is a formal Liberal voter. Back in. The images are coming out from a Quebec cartoonist, Carney with Canada dead on his shoulders. And I think there was some criticism about Pierre for a while about really does he have an agenda and a plan, and that has really started to form in the previous few weeks with a nice compilation by Mario for the North, repealing Bill C-69, 15% income tax cut, capital gains tax cut GST on homes, defer capital gains if you're investing in Canada, travel tax breaks for workers, crime and catch release forms, a lot of crime running rampant in Canada. I think a lot of people agree with this. Getting rid of alcohol tax. I don't really care about alcohol, so that one I don't care about. Pipelines seems good. I also empathize with the climate, but with everything going on right now, Canada needs to figure this stuff out. More TFSA room, that's great. Deport criminals, great. Protecting dental and childcare programs, which a lot of people were concerned about, that's also great. And then, of course, his agenda was the one that really pushed the carbon tax cut. I think he will permanently cut that versus a temporary pause that Carney is putting in, possibly to bring back as soon as he becomes Prime Minister. Now, the lineups and the rallies continue to be huge for Pierre. He's got a huge facility here. That's great to see, but not everyone likes Pierre. I just thought I would highlight this for a second. PBD going at Conservatives, and especially Pierre. He had Maxime Bernier on here, but a full rant. He must have really upset PBD, and he did say that it was the first time that someone disrespected his campaign booking team. I'm a fan of PBD in some ways, although, man, he's in an echo chamber right now in his own podcast. I tried to listen to it for a bit. It's a little bit too much for me even. I think some diversity would be fantastic to see. I do, however, agree with his points that it would be great to see him and expose him to an American audience and get more views, but PBD has dunked himself into the Canadian rhetoric, and man, there was a lot of pushback about this is not how Canada works, all of this stuff. I think there's valid points on each side. I don't think Pierre needed to go specifically on PBD, but I do think some of these appearances outside of the Jordan Peterson one that he did, which was a huge driver for him, would have been very helpful. So it would be nice to see this. There were some rumors about a Rogan appearance, but I'm not sure if that was an April Fool's joke. So we'll have to see what happens here. And just one last political story here. We had this controversy in Canada where Pierre talks about the biological clock. Let's check this out.
We'll not forget that young 36-year-old couple whose biological clock is running out faster than they can afford to buy a home and have kids. We will not.
So people did not like this. Liberals did not like this. On behalf of 36-year-old women everywhere, it's your time that's running out, not ours. So that was one form of the response to this. Let's check out the other. All it took for Paul Pierre to refer to a woman's biological clock, and suddenly liberals everywhere believe in biology. That libs pretending the term biological clock in a discussion about family affordability is offensive. Meanwhile, they'll happily call women menstruators or birthing persons. And this is the piece that I see here too, this fake outrage around this and just this moment of attack. We got one more. As a woman with a biological clock, I won't be taking anyone seriously who's pretending to be outraged by the words biological clock. And I think maybe the more middle ground here is a little bit strange, maybe the term itself, but the actual point that he's making makes sense. The generation is holding up or giving up on having children amongst affordability crises here. And as someone who's having his first kid at 32, I can tell you I feel the same way. I didn't even feel close to being ready, which is really a shame because as I now hit this age and gain that perspective, it's something that I had wished I had done earlier, but it was just the circumstances that I were in. And I know a generation above us had kids much earlier. Some of that is maybe our choice. Some of it's not. Some of it is affordability, that we want to have houses before we have kids. And although I maybe do understand people that didn't like or got triggered by this word biological clock, my wife and myself, we talked about this. My wife's 34, and this was a big thought that we had. We wanted to have 2 kids, and we knew that we were coming up on this time where we hit 35. It's considered geriatric pregnancy, and the complications that could come dramatically increase after that age. And so we wanted to start as quickly as possible and have those kids before we reach that age. So I just thought this was such an interesting moment and like sign of the times that we're in, where a truly meaningful statement and crises that people are having is thrown off by a specific phrase that triggers an entire half of a population who are the ones being impacted significantly by that crisis. And so I wish we would all grow up. And this is just one of those moments where I think liberals, this fake outrage that comes from this specific term really starts to show and dilutes the impact of the legitimate arguments they have. So with that, politics done, maybe there's a little crossover. Let's jump into some tech and financials. Tesla, with their lowest deliveries in almost 3 years, even lower than they thought, still up. This is something that I fully don't understand between competition in China, Europe, and then of course, the divisive nature of Elon Musk's role in the Trump campaign and now Doge. This continues. You've got more and more people, these videos. What I don't understand is that, again, there's cameras on these things, so you're going to get seen like this person's just in clear view in days keying this vehicle. It's like a pretty brutal thing to do, I think, personally. And so the claims of this meme stocks or detachment of reality are really starting to take place. And I love the new Tesla model. I think the new Tesla model looks great, but I won't buy it now because I just run the risk of it being attacked or vandalized. We're seeing this at actual Tesla dealerships, and then we're seeing this in vehicles. Imagine you have a kid and you're seeing these videos of road rage where there's people threatening them on the road. You don't want to put yourself through that. So I think it's a really horrible thing that's gone on. I think they're going to continue to have problems. And I just don't see, even with this rumor that Elon Musk was going to step away from Doge, which then the White House said is not true, that they can now detach Elon Musk from Tesla, even if he stepped down as CEO of Tesla. I think the damage is done on Tesla, and they're going to have some huge breakthroughs through technology and some massive rebranding or sentiment change for them to be able to continue their success. And that's not even really fully considering things like BYD and new technology from them that's letting you charge for 400 kilometers in 5 minutes. So I think the competition just continues to increase. And China, obviously one of their best markets, is really starting to degrade for them as this competition grows. So lastly, tech, let's end it strong. We have OpenAI. If you've been on the internet, you've most likely seen some Studio Ghibli. OpenAI released their image generation model. And early adopters all the way to Grammys and kids, they started using this image model from OpenAI. You can see the pictures here. You can upload a picture, retrace it in this Studio Ghibli style. So this became hugely popular. Lots of controversy around this. And again, this idea of copyright and intellectual property and their ability to do this, but didn't stop people from creating images, including my wife, who got caught in a trap of firstly creating them for herself and then getting requests from other people. You've got some incredible examples of graphic designs, Wikipedia, diagrams, ad creatives, other art styles, extracting assets, AI memes, print ads, and all forms of other art styles, including Muppets, websites and apps UIs, illustrations, and even comic. And then some really interesting work with now taking the original image, using it with Sora or Runway or some of these tools to then animate the image. And the messaging about graphic designers being done continues and maybe even increases in its fervor. Now, what's interesting, the more macro story has been, hey, this DeepSeek, all these questions about, are the GPUs needed? Are these data centers needed? And then you have this statement from Sam Altman saying our GPUs are melting. Obviously, image generation being much more intense and heavyweight than some of the text generation or analysis that it's doing. And so they had to scale down this pretty quickly, especially after that release day when the Ghibli images went crazy. And so this debate about usage in GPUs and data centers continues to rage on, with some more indicators or signals that maybe this compute requirement is required. And at the same time, you have OpenAI, latest deal that solidifies it, a $300 billion valuation, SoftBank contributing 75%. 500 million people using ChatGPT every week. Previously raised $6.6 billion in October. Just in October, that's valuing at $157 billion. So that's double the valuation. Employees are going to be happy. Investors early on, holy crap. And of course, there is also this other piece that they must transition to a for-profit entity by year's end in order to secure the full investment. So we'll maybe see some problems as that happens. And then with this last round, joins the most valuable private companies, I believe the most valuable, SpaceX, China's ByteDance, and Stripe. So that means OpenAI, the most valuable private company in the world. Some people not liking that, valued at $300 billion, limited revenue, no profits, one main product line, and then just to do a comparison against Baba. At the same time, an interesting story about OpenAI caving to release some open source, and not just open source, actual open weights for these models. And it could be somewhat related to DeepSeek, but Fortune saying that's not the only reason. So, a lot going on in the world as I'm finishing up this recording, getting closer to Liberation Day and the wonderful chaos that will bring us. I'm sure I'll have a video once the dust settles a little bit on that. And I appreciate you checking this out. As always, I'll continue recording and creating and doing my best to try to provide some insights and perspective from my view as a Canadian founder, a business owner with a kid coming, former hockey player, psychedelic advocate, all of the things that make me whoever the hell I am, and that seems to change every day anyways. But whoever I am, I appreciate you joining in, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Bye-bye.